The sky above the ruined colony was gray, thick with the smell of smoke and ash. Once it had been a bright world filled with music and color. Now everything lay broken, towers fallen, streets cracked, and silence covering the land like a heavy blanket. A human relief convoy moved through the ruins. Trucks hummed, machines scanned for life, and soldiers walked carefully with weapons ready. They had come to bring food and medicine after the long war. But to the people of this world, humans were still a name of fear. Among the soldiers walked Eli, a small boy with messy brown hair and curious eyes. He was only 10, the son of a medic named Dr. Mara, who worked with the convoy. His father had died in the war, and his mother never wanted him near battle. But the camp was safer than the ships, so Eli stayed close to her. While adults worked, Eli wandered. He looked at the burned walls and melted metal. It was hard to imagine that people once lived here, that children once laughed in these empty streets. Then he saw her, behind a pile of rubble, in the shadow of a fallen arch, a small figurehead. At first, Eli thought it was a statue, but when she moved, his heart jumped. It was a child, an alien girl. Her skin glowed faint blue under the dust, her eyes wide and shining like two crystals. She was thin, trembling, and her clothes were torn. She held a broken stick like a weapon, ready to defend herself even though her hands were shaking. Eli froze. He remembered what the soldiers said. "Don't approach them. Some still hate us." But he could see her lips quivering. She looked so scared, so alone. His mother's voice echoed in his mind. "Never walk past someone who needs help, Eli. Kindness is stronger than fear." He took a small breath and slowly crouched down so he wouldn't look dangerous. "Hey," he whispered softly. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The alien girl flinched. Her glowing eyes darted left and right, searching for soldiers. Eli noticed that no one was paying attention. Everyone was too busy unloading supplies and setting up scanners. Dust swirled between them like mist. He looked down at his hands. Inside his pocket was his favorite toy, a small spinning top made of metal and plastic, painted in bright red and blue. It was old and scratched, but when he spun it, it made a soft humming sound, like a song. His father had given it to him before leaving for his last mission. Eli carried it everywhere. He hesitated. The toy was all he had left of his father. But then he looked at the alien girl again, the hunger in her eyes, the fear in her trembling shoulders. Slowly he reached into his pocket and pulled it out. "Here," he said. "It's for you." She stared at the object in his hand, not understanding. Eli smiled and placed it gently on the ground between them. He touched the top and gave it a quick spin. It whirled in the dust, humming softly as it moved in little circles. The faint sound cut through the silence like music in a graveyard. The alien girl gasped quietly. Her lips parted, and for the first time she made a small sound, like wind through glass. Her eyes followed the spinning top until it slowed and stopped. Eli nudged it toward her with a smile. "You can have it," he said. For a moment she didn't move. Then carefully, she reached out with trembling fingers and picked it up. The blue light under her skin brightened slightly. She held it close, eyes wet, as if it was the most precious thing in the world. Eli felt a strange warmth in his chest. He grinned, stood up, and gave a small wave. "See you later," he said softly, and walked back toward his mother. But the alien girl didn't take her eyes off him. She looked at the spinning top again, and tears rolled down her dusty cheeks. She had never seen something so simple, so beautiful, and never from a human. As night fell, the camp grew quiet. Soldiers set up lights and security drones. The stars above were hidden behind clouds. Inside her tent, Dr. Mara worked on injured survivors while Eli sat by the window, thinking about the girl. He hoped she was safe, hoped she wasn't alone anymore. Out in the ruins, the girl sat with the spinning top in her hands. She tried to make it spin again, just like Eli did. When it hummed, a faint tune echoed through the darkness. Then, deep in the shadows, Hundreds of glowing eyes opened. They were not machines, but warriors, tall, armored, and silent. For years they had hidden in the ruins, watching the humans with hatred. But tonight they saw something different. Their child, the daughter of their tribe, held a human gift. A toy. A sign of peace. The commander of the hidden warriors stepped forward. His body was covered in scars, his armor cracked and old. He stared at the spinning light in the girl's hands and then looked toward the human camp in the distance. He raised a clawed hand, signaling his men to hold their fire. "Who gave her that?" he whispered. None answered. But in his heart he knew. The commander turned his gaze toward the camp lights flickering in the distance. The humans were resting, unaware of the eyes watching them. The wind carried the faint hum of the toy across the ruins. Soft, warm, innocent. And then, for the first time in many years, the alien warriors did not move to attack. They only watched in silence as the little human boy slept, the boy who had unknowingly changed everything with a single act of kindness. The night wind whispered through the ruins, carrying the scent of ash and rain. The human camp flickered with pale lights, surrounded by broken towers that reached into the dark sky like bones. Somewhere beyond those ruins, unseen eyes watched. Hundreds of them. Inside the command tent, Captain Rowan studied the map projected on the table. Red dots marked the relief teams, while blue lights pulsed where the scanners detected life. But something was wrong. One section, the northern ruins, showed faint signals, moving, steady, and growing in number. "They're not wildlife," muttered a soldier beside him. "Pattern's too organized." Captain Rowan frowned. "Keep it quiet. Last thing we need is panic. Increase patrols and double the perimeter guards." He turned off the map, unaware that far beyond their sensors, 500 alien warriors crouched in silence under the moonless sky. They had gathered in a vast ring around the camp, their armor dull and scarred, their weapons glowing faintly blue. Each one moved without sound, eyes fixed on the flickering lights of the human tents. For years, they had lived with hatred. They had lost families, cities, everything. But now something strange held them back. The small glowing toy spinning softly in the hands of a little girl. The alien commander stood at the center, his name whispered among his people as Karen. His voice was deep and calm, but his heart was full of fire. He watched as the child, his niece, clutched the tiny spinning top close to her chest. "This was given by a human," said one of his lieutenants. "A trick, maybe. A signal." Karen looked down at the girl. She was smiling for the first time since the war ended. Her small fingers spun the toy again, and the soft hum filled the air around them. "It hums like our heartstones," Karen said quietly. "Our ancestors used to give them to children during peace rites." His soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Peace rites. The words felt like ghosts from another age. "Commander," said another warrior, his scarred face hidden under his helmet. "They occupy our lands. They burned our skies. You cannot let one act change your judgment." Karen said nothing. He stared at the spinning toy. The reflection of its light shimmered in his eyes. "She is laughing again," he murmured. "When was the last time we heard a child laugh?" Silence fell among the warriors. At the human camp, Eli sat beside the fire, half asleep. His mother worked inside the medical tent, treating survivors, both human and alien. Captain Rowan paced quietly, his hand on his weapon. Every few minutes his communicator buzzed with new readings from the drones. "Movement again?" he asked. "Yes, sir," replied the guard. "North sector. Hundreds of blips, but they're not advancing." "Not advancing?" Rowan frowned. "Then what are they doing?" "Just watching," the guard said softly. The captain stepped outside the perimeter lights and peered into the dark. Nothing but shadows. The ruins seemed alive, every crack and stone whispering secrets. Behind him, Eli rubbed his eyes and looked at the captain. "Is something wrong?" Rowan turned. "Couldn't sleep, kid?" Eli shook his head. I think someone's out there." The captain sighed. "It's just the wind, son. Go back to your tent." But Eli didn't move. He pointed toward the ruins. No, I saw lights. Blue ones, like her skin. Rowan froze. Her? The girl, Eli said quietly. The one I met today. For a moment, the captain didn't know what to say. Then he knelt beside the boy. You met one of them? Eli nodded. She was scared. I gave her my toy. She smiled. Rowan stared at the child, trying to understand. The scanners had picked up strange readings, but no one imagined contact this soon. You gave her your toy? Eli nodded again. She looked lonely. Rowan stood slowly, eyes narrowing toward the north. You might have just done more than any diplomat ever could. In the ruins, Karen looked up as a faint light flashed in the sky. Drones. He knew humans were watching, but he didn't raise his weapon. Instead, he lifted his hand, palm open, an ancient sign of truce among his people. His warriors shifted uneasily. Commander? One asked. We watch. We do not strike, Karen said firmly. The child carries a symbol. Until dawn, no one moves. The order spread like a silent wave through the ranks. Weapons were lowered. The warriors melted back into the shadows, their glowing eyes fading one by one. The alien girl held the toy tight and whispered softly to it, as if it could hear her. He was kind, she said. The human was kind. Karen looked at her and then at the stars. Maybe kindness survived after all, he said. By dawn, the human camp was still standing. The soldiers were tense, but unharmed. Captain Rowan walked through the quiet rows of tents, his boots crunching softly in the dust. He found Eli sitting near the fence, looking at the ruins. Still thinking about her? The captain asked. Eli nodded. Do you think she's okay? Rowan looked at the horizon, where faint blue lights faded with the morning sun. If I had to guess, kid, I think she's safer than any of us. Far away on the highest hill overlooking the camp, Karen stood with his warriors. As sunlight touched their armor, he placed something on the ground, a small stone carved with old symbols. One of his lieutenants stepped forward. Commander, what is that? Karen's eyes softened. A message, he said. In our tongue, it means truce. He turned away, his cloak brushing the dust. The humans will find it, and when they do, they will know. The war may finally end. The warriors followed him into the mist, leaving the symbol glowing faintly behind, a promise carved in stone. And somewhere in the camp below, a human boy smiled in his sleep, dreaming of a world where a toy could stop a war. Morning light broke through the smoky sky, painting the ruins in pale gold. The human camp began to stir. Engines hummed, drones lifted, soldiers stretched after a long, sleepless night. The air was calm, but heavy with the kind of silence that followed storms. Captain Rowan stood at the perimeter fence, scanning the northern ruins with his binoculars. His jaw tightened. No movement. No heat signatures, nothing. He had expected an attack, but instead, there was peace, a strange kind of peace that felt almost unreal. Sir, a voice called out. It was Lieutenant Harris holding something wrapped in cloth. You should see this. Rowan took it, unwrapping the fabric carefully. Inside was a smooth black stone carved with thin glowing lines that formed a spiral, delicate, almost beautiful. At its center was a single alien symbol shining faintly blue. What is it? Harris asked. Rowan frowned. An old dialect. I saw markings like this during the armistice talks on Vega 9. He looked closer, his voice lowering. It means truce. The lieutenant's eyes widened. They left it for us? Rowan nodded slowly. Looks like it. He turned toward the camp, mind racing. 100 questions swirled. Why now? What do they want? But beneath the tension, one quiet thought kept echoing. Eli. Across the camp, Eli sat beside his mother, watching the medics treat the wounded. His thoughts drifted to the alien girl. He imagined her somewhere out there, spinning the toy, laughing softly. The idea made him smile, Dr. Mara noticed. You're thinking about her again, aren't you? Eli nodded. She looked sad yesterday. I hope she's not hungry anymore. Mara sighed, brushing dust from his hair. You did something kind, Eli. Sometimes small kindness changes more than we think. Just then, Captain Rowan approached. Doctor, may I borrow your son for a moment? Eli blinked. Did I do something wrong? Rowan smiled faintly. No, kid. You might have done something historic. They walked together to the northern perimeter, where the stone rested on a crate under the sun. Its glow was soft but steady. A group of officers stood nearby, whispering, unsure what to do. When Eli saw it, his eyes widened. It's beautiful, he whispered. Rowan knelt beside him. You recognize that color? Eli nodded. It's like her skin. The girl I met, she glowed like that. Rowan leaned closer. We think her people left this for us. It means peace, a truce. They saw your toy, didn't they? Eli's lips curved into a shy smile. She liked it. The captain exhaled, shaking his head with wonder. One toy. One moment of kindness. And now 500 warriors are watching instead of fighting. The other soldiers listened quietly. The usual hardness in their faces softened. Even the gruff engineers who had seen too much war looked moved. As the sun climbed higher, drones captured images from the ruins. Faint trails, footprints leading away, signs of campfires. The aliens had vanished into the mist, but they had left behind food sacks and wrapped bundles filled with medicinal herbs. Gifts. Dr. Mara examined the herbs and gasped. These are their healing roots. Extinct on most planets. They brought them to us. Rowan nodded. A trade, maybe. Or gratitude. He turned toward Eli. I think they trust you, kid. You were the first human they didn't fear. Eli looked down, unsure how to feel. I just didn't want her to cry. Rowan smiled softly. Sometimes that's enough. That night, the camp gathered around a large fire. The soldiers, medics, and engineers sat quietly as Rowan spoke. We've been at war for decades. We've lost brothers, sisters, entire worlds, and now, peace might have started with a child's toy. He held up the stone. Its blue glow flickered against the faces around him. This isn't a weapon. It's a message. Someone out there wants to talk. The soldiers murmured among themselves. Some were cautious, others hopeful. One veteran stood up and said, If they want to talk, maybe it's time we listen. Eli smiled from his spot near the flames. He felt warmth inside. The same warmth he saw in the alien girl's eyes when she first spun the toy. He didn't understand diplomacy or history, but he understood this. She wasn't a monster. She was just lonely. Miles away, hidden deep within the ruins, Commander Karen watched from a distance. His scouts had reported that the humans found the truth stone and hadn't destroyed it. That alone was a miracle. He stood beside his niece and the little alien girl. She sat in his shadow, spinning the toy again and again, its hum blending with the faint chirps of the night insects. Uncle, she said softly, will they come back? Karen looked at the glowing horizon where the human camp lights shimmered. Maybe they will, he said. Maybe the boy will. She smiled, her small tusks glinting faintly. He was kind. Karen's gaze softened. Yes, and kindness is something we forgot long ago. He turned to his warriors. Prepare the council. Tomorrow we send our envoy. Not with weapons. With gifts, the warriors nodded silently. Some looked uncertain, others inspired. Back in the camp, Eli lay awake in his tent. The truth stone glowed faintly on the table beside him, filling the tent with blue light. He reached out and touched it. It felt warm, alive, almost breathing. I hope you're safe, he whispered to the darkness, and I hope we meet again. Outside, the wind carried faint music, a distant humming sound, soft and rhythmic. The same hum his toy made, but this time it came from far away, echoing across the broken city like a heartbeat of peace. Eli smiled and closed his eyes. He didn't know that the next morning, the aliens would return, not to fight, but to stand before humans for the first time since the war. And they would ask for him. The morning began with stillness. No wind, no hum of drones, just the pale sun rising above the shattered skyline. The human camp moved slowly, heavy with tension. No one spoke loudly. Every ear waited for something. A sound, a sign, anything. Captain Rowan stood near the edge of the perimeter, binoculars raised, his face unreadable. Beyond the dust, a shadow moved, and then another. Soon a line of figures emerged from the ruins, tall and silent, their blue armor catching the sunlight. The soldiers tensed. "Weapons lifted, hold your fire," Rowan said calmly, raising his hand. The figures walked closer until their details became clear. Alien warriors, at least a dozen of them, their armor cracked, their faces hidden behind old masks. Between them walked the little alien girl. She carried something in her small hands, the spinning top glowing faintly red and blue. Behind her was their leader, the massive warrior known as Commander Karen. He carried no weapon, only a carved staff wrapped in white cloth, a sign of peace. Rowan exhaled slowly. "They're coming to talk." Dr. Mara stepped beside him, her eyes wide. "Should we evacuate the child?" Rowan shook his head. "They came because of him." He turned. "Eli." Eli looked up from where he sat near the supply crates, eyes wide but unafraid. "They're here?" Rowan nodded. "Stay close to me. But when I tell you, speak to them. They trust you." The soldiers watched as the alien group stopped 20 meters from the fence. Then, with a low metallic sound, Karen raised his staff and drove it gently into the ground. The little girl stepped forward and placed the toy at its base. Rowan walked out slowly with Eli and Mara beside him. No one else moved. The entire camp held its breath. When the two groups stood face to face, Karen removed his helmet. His face was marked with long scars, his eyes deep and glowing like stormlight. He looked at Eli first, not at the soldiers, not at the captain, but at the small boy who had changed everything. The commander knelt on one knee, his heavy armor creaking. The other warriors followed his motion, lowering their heads in silence. Rowan's soldiers looked at one another in disbelief. No one had ever seen alien warriors bow. Karen spoke, his voice low and rough, yet carrying strange gentleness. "This child," he said, pointing at Eli, "gave my niece a gift. A small circle of metal that sings. In our tongue, such gifts were once signs of peace, of trust, of heart." Rowan listened carefully, his translator drone repeating each word in a soft voice. Karen continued, "We have fought humans for generations. We called you destroyers, monsters. But last night, for the first time, our children slept without fear. Because of him." Eli swallowed, unsure what to say. He looked at the alien girl. She smiled shyly, holding the toy again. Rowan spoke slowly. "We didn't come to fight anymore. We came to help rebuild. But your people hid. We thought you hated us." Karen's eyes darkened. "We did. Until we saw your kindness." He turned to his warriors. "These humans bring healing. We bring protection. The war is over." The alien girl stepped closer to Eli, her small hands shaking slightly. She looked up at him and said something soft in her language. The translator paused, then spoke. "She says thank you." Eli smiled and held out his hand. She hesitated, then placed her glowing fingers in his palm. The touch was warm, not cold as he expected. The soldiers watching from behind lowered their weapons. Some smiled, others blinked hard, pretending not to be moved. Dr. Mara's eyes filled with tears. "He did it," she whispered. "He really did." Karen stood tall again and looked at Rowan. "Let us speak as leaders." "But the child stays. He carries the symbol of peace. His presence will remind us why we meet." Rowan nodded. "Agreed." They gathered under a half-collapsed dome nearby where sunlight filtered through cracks in the roof. Dust floated like gold in the air. Humans on one side, aliens on the other, and Eli sitting in the middle beside the little girl. The meeting began quietly. There were no threats, no angry words, only cautious talk about rebuilding, medicine, food, and safety. Rowan offered supplies. Karen offered protection from raiders still hiding in the wastelands. Trust began to form, slow, fragile, but real. At one point, the alien girl showed Eli a drawing scratched into metal, two small figures holding a spinning toy. "One human, one alien." Eli grinned. "That's us," he said. She nodded proudly. When the sun reached its peak, Karen rose and extended his clawed hand toward Rowan. The captain hesitated for a moment, then clasped it firmly. "Then it's done," Karen said. "Peace begins here." The alien warriors pounded their chests once in salute. The sound echoed through the ruins like thunder, not of war, but of unity. That evening when the aliens left, they didn't disappear into the shadows. They set up camp nearby, close enough that the two groups could see each other's fires. For the first time in decades, human and alien banners fluttered under the same wind. As night fell, Eli and the alien girl sat side by side watching the spinning top glow in the dark. "It still hums," Eli said. She smiled. "It always hums for friends." Rowan watched from afar, arms folded, a small smile on his face. He whispered to Mara, "You realize this boy may have just ended a galactic war with a toy?" Mara looked at her son with pride. "No," she said softly. "He ended it with kindness." And somewhere beyond the stars, for the first time in centuries, a faint signal spread across both human and alien networks. A single phrase written in 2 languages: "The truce of the toy." Days passed since the meeting under the broken dome. What began as silence and suspicion slowly turned into voices, cautious, curious, and finally warm. Humans and aliens worked side by side to rebuild the colony. Soldiers helped clear rubble, while alien warriors lifted heavy beams with glowing tools. Medics traded medicines with alien healers, learning how their plants could cure human wounds faster than any drug. The first bridge between 2 worlds was being built, not from steel or stone, but from trust. One morning, as the twin suns rose, Eli sat outside the camp with the alien girl beside him. She had told him her name now, Lura. Her voice was soft, her laughter gentle. They sat together, drawing in the dust. Eli used a stick while Lura traced glowing patterns with her fingertip, leaving trails of blue light behind. "What are you making?" Eli asked. She smiled. "Our story." He looked closer. She had drawn 2 small figures, one human, one alien, holding hands beside a spinning top that glowed bright. Above them, she had written her people's word for hope. Eli added his own word beside it: peace. They looked at each other and grinned. That same day, Captain Rowan recorded a message to send back to Earth Command. He stood before a small camera drone, the truce stone glowing faintly on the table beside him. "This is Captain Rowan. Outpost report," he began. "Contact established with surviving alien population. Hostility none. Intent peaceful." The first communication began through an unexpected ambassador. He glanced toward Eli, who was showing the toy to a group of alien children, teaching them how to spin it on flat stones. "A human child," Rowan continued, his tone proud. "His kindness changed everything. They now call him the Little Maker of Peace." He paused before finishing. "Recommend halting all military movement in this sector. Humanity's war here is over." When the message was transmitted, it spread faster than anyone expected. Within weeks, human colonies and alien outposts alike began hearing the same story: a human boy who gave peace instead of fear. Factories on Earth began recreating the toy. They called it the Peace Spinner. It was small, simple, and affordable, a spinning top made from alloy and glass. When spun, it emitted a soft hum and glowed with 2 colors, human red and alien blue. Children played with them in the streets of Earth, on the deserts of Mars, and in alien cities that had once been battlegrounds. Every home that owned one remembered the same story: the boy and the girl in the ruins who started it all. Across the colonies, schools began teaching what became known as the Truce of the Toy. Murals were painted, statues were built, and for the first time in decades, humans and aliens celebrated the same holiday, Peace Day. But for Eli and Lura, life remained simple. They still played together every morning, chasing fireflies under the double suns. The alien warriors had become protectors of the human camp, guarding supply convoys and rebuilding cities side by side. Dr. Mara trained alien medics. In return, they taught her how to grow healing plants that glowed in the dark. At night, around the fire, songs were sung, old human melodies mixed with alien chants. Lura would hum softly, her voice blending with the whirring sound of Eli's spinning top. It was peaceful. It was beautiful. And yet, far beyond the horizon, not everyone was happy. In a distant command base orbiting the planet, a human admiral frowned at the broadcast. "You're telling me," he said, slamming his hand on the table, "that a boy and a toy ended a war that cost us half a century?" The officer beside him nodded. "Yes, sir. The locals refuse to fight. Even our troops are joining the rebuilding efforts." The admiral sighed and stared out the viewport at the stars. Maybe that's what we were fighting for all along. He turned away, muttering softly, "Let the boy keep his peace." Weeks later, a transport ship landed near the camp. The humans and aliens gathered to greet the visitors, journalists, scientists, and envoys carrying cameras. They wanted to see the heroes of the truce. Reporters surrounded Captain Rowan and Dr. Mara, asking questions. But when they spotted Eli and Lura sitting together under a half-rebuilt dome, laughing over a spinning toy, their voices fell quiet. They filmed in silence. The world didn't need speeches or politics, just that one image, a human boy and an alien girl, sitting side by side, sharing something small but beautiful. That night, as stars filled the sky, Karen stood on a hill overlooking the camp. He spoke softly to Rowan, who stood beside him. "My people once said peace was impossible," Karen said. "But a child proved us wrong. It seems the galaxy doesn't need warriors, it needs kindness." Rowan smiled faintly. "Sometimes one child can do more than 1,000 soldiers." Karen nodded. "And one toy can change history." They stood in silence for a long time, watching as children, human and alien alike, spun glowing tops across the ground, their laughter echoing through the ruins. Far above them, orbiting satellites transmitted the signal again and again. Peace begins with one act of kindness. And on every world that received it, from the frozen moons to the red deserts, children spun their toys and whispered the same promise. We will not hate. We will not forget. We will be kind. The sound of 1,000 spinning tops filled the galaxy, humming softly like a heartbeat, a song of humanity's greatest victory, not won by weapons, but by a child's heart. Peace lasted 50 days, 50 days of laughter, rebuilding, and shared meals beneath the twin suns. For the first time in decades, both species worked side by side without fear. But peace is fragile. And somewhere in the darkness of space, greed still lived. A mercenary ship entered orbit above the ruined colony, its hull painted black, its signal unregistered. These were human raiders, soldiers who had refused to surrender after the war. They called themselves the Pureborn. Their leader, Colonel Vance, sneered as he watched the live feed from the surface. Humans and aliens working together, sharing water, sharing food. Disgusting, he spat. Traitors shaking hands with monsters. They forget why we fought. Behind him, men in stolen armor loaded weapons. Orders, sir? Vance grinned. We'll remind them who the real enemy is. Burn the camp. Capture the alien children. Make them remember fear. The ship descended silently through the clouds. On the ground, night had just fallen. Children, human and alien, chased glowing toys through the dust, their laughter echoing across the ruins. Eli and Lura sat near the main fire, spinning their peace spinner and watching it hum between them. Captain Rowan watched them from afar with quiet pride. If only the whole galaxy could see this, he said. But before Dr. Mara could answer, the sky flashed red. A thunderous explosion shook the earth. The medical tent burst into flames. Screams filled the air. Rowan grabbed his communicator. Incoming attack! All units, defensive positions. Above them, the mercenary dropship screamed through the clouds, firing plasma bolts into the camp. Soldiers scattered. Civilians ran for cover, and panic spread like wildfire. Lura froze, clutching the toy. Eli grabbed her hand. Come on. They ran toward the shelters, but the ground exploded beside them, throwing them down. Dust filled the air. The sound of engines roared above. Captain Rowan saw them and sprinted through the chaos. Eli. Before he could reach them, the raiders landed. Dozens of armored men stormed the camp, firing wildly. One grabbed Lura by the arm and yanked her up. Alien brat. The soldier snarled. You belong to us now. Eli threw himself at the man's leg. Let her go. The mercenary backhanded the boy, sending him crashing into the dirt. Blood trickled down his cheek. Rowan aimed his rifle, but before he could shoot, the ground itself began to tremble. A deep, echoing roar rolled across the battlefield. From the darkness beyond the ruins, blue lights ignited. Hundreds of them. The alien warriors had returned. Commander Kyran led them, his armor glowing like fireflies in the mist. His voice thundered through the night. You attack children? Then face us. 500 alien warriors charged forward in perfect formation, their weapons cutting through the mercenaries like lightning. Plasma clashed with energy blades. Sparks filled the sky. Rowan's soldiers joined the fight, standing shoulder to shoulder with their former enemies. For the first time, human and alien fought not against each other, but for each other. Eli crawled toward Lura, who was pinned under debris. "Hold on," he shouted. She was crying, clutching the broken toy against her chest. "Don't leave me, Eli." He tried to lift the metal beam, but it was too heavy. "I'm not leaving you." Rowan reached them, pulling the beam aside with burning hands. "Go, kid. Get her to safety." Karen's warriors formed a shield wall around the children as explosions tore through the camp. Laura looked up at the commander, tears streaking down her glowing face. "They're hurting us again." Karen placed a massive hand on her shoulder. "Not while we still stand." The battle raged for hours. The mercenaries fought fiercely, but they were outnumbered and outmatched by a united force. Rowan fought beside Karen, covering his flank. "Never thought I'd fight with you," Rowan said, panting. Karen grinned through his helmet. "Nor I with you, human, but this feels right." When the last of the mercenaries tried to flee to their ship, Karen's warriors unleashed their final volley. The black craft exploded midair, raining fire across the plain. The battle was over. But the camp lay in ruins, tents burning, wounded crying. Smoke rising into the dawn, Eli and Laura sat together, trembling. The peace spinner lay broken between them, its pieces scattered in the dirt. Eli picked up the shattered half and whispered, "It's gone." Laura shook her head weakly. "No, it still hums inside us." Dr. Mara knelt beside them, checking for wounds. "You two are safe. That's all that matters." Karen approached, limping, his armor scorched. He knelt before the children and placed his clawed hand over theirs. "The toy may be broken," he said softly, "but its meaning lives. You gave us something no fire can destroy, faith." Eli looked up. "Will they come back?" Rowan joined them, face tired but calm. "If they do," he said, "they won't find us divided again." Karen nodded. "We stand together now. Humans and my kind, one shield." As the first light of dawn touched the battlefield, the surviving soldiers and warriors gathered in silence. Together they planted both banners, human red and alien blue, side by side in the ashes. Above them, the wind carried faint humming, the broken toy's final sound, spinning one last time in the dust before stopping forever. Karen turned to Rowan. "Your people call this peace?" Rowan looked at the children holding hands. "No," he said softly, "this is family." The commander smiled, weary but proud. "Then let the galaxy know, and if they strike one of us, they face all of us." And as the sun rose higher, light fell on faces human and alien alike, scarred, soot-covered, but united. The peace they built was no longer a story. It was a promise written in blood and bravery, a promise that would echo far beyond their world. The war that almost began again ended before the next sunrise. The fires were put out, the wounded were healed, and among the ruins, something new took root. Not fear, not hatred, but understanding. Days passed. The broken camp was rebuilt stronger than before. Human engineers and alien builders worked side by side, laughing as they shared tools and stories. No longer two sides. No longer strangers. Eli and Laura watched from the edge of the camp as the new structures rose from the dust. Where the battle once burned, now stood a tall arch made of human steel and alien crystal, joined together at the center, a bridge that shimmered in both red and blue light. At its base they buried the broken toy, not as a loss, but as a seed, a small plaque read, "From a child's kindness came a galaxy's peace." That night the stars shone clearer than ever. Commander Karen stood beside Captain Rowan on the hill overlooking the rebuilt colony. "The boy and the girl," Karen said quietly. "They remind me of what we used to be before we learned to hate." Rowan nodded, watching them laugh below. "Maybe peace never comes from generals or soldiers. Maybe it always begins with those who still believe in good." Karen's eyes glowed faintly in the starlight. "Then let us protect that belief, always." The two warriors, once enemies, stood together as brothers, united not by war, but by hope. Weeks later, the first joint ship was built, a vessel made with both human and alien technology. Its name was simple, the Truce. It would carry envoys across the stars to other colonies, spreading the story of what happened here. Before launch, a small ceremony was held. Humans and aliens gathered in the great square surrounding a crystal pillar carved with two names, Eli and Laura. Dr. Mara stood proudly beside her son. "You ready?" she asked softly. Eli nodded, holding a small object in his hand, a new spinner built from pieces of the old one. Red and blue light pulsed gently within. Laura smiled beside him. You fixed it? He shook his head. No, we rebuilt it together. The crowd fell silent as the children stepped forward. They placed the glowing spinner atop the pillar. It began to hum. The sound spread through the square, soft, calm, steady. Every human, every alien felt it deep inside their chest. A rhythm that wasn't just a toy's vibration, it was the heartbeat of unity. The ship, the Truce, launched into the sky that night, its engines glowing in twin colors. As it rose, people across the colony lifted their hands and spun their own toys, letting them hum in unison. From orbit, the planet glowed, not in fire, but in light. Messages were sent across networks and colonies, across distant systems and forgotten stations. Peace began here. Remember the child and the toy. And slowly, one by one, other worlds answered. Humans who had lost hope, aliens who had lost families. All of them began to rebuild, inspired by the story of two children who refused to hate. The galaxy began to change. Years passed. The colony thrived. Cities rose again, surrounded by green fields and clear air. Statues of Eli and Laura stood in the center of the capital, not as heroes of war, but as symbols of peace. Tourists came from across the stars to see the small spinner sealed within the crystal dome. They said that when the wind blew through the valley, you could still hear its faint hum. One evening, long after the sun had set, an old man walked quietly to the monument. His hair was gray, his hands worn from years of building. It was Eli. He placed a small flower at the base of the statue and smiled. "We did it, Laura," he whispered. Beside him, a tall alien woman approached, her skin glowing softly in the moonlight. It was Laura, grown now, graceful, her eyes still kind. "We did it together," she said. "You gave us peace, and I gave you friendship." They stood in silence for a long time, watching the stars. In the distance, children played with tiny spinning toys, their laughter echoing through the night. Some human, some alien, none caring who was which. Eli turned to Laura and smiled. "Do you hear it?" She tilted her head. "The humming?" He nodded. "It never stopped." Laura smiled softly. "Because kindness never ends." Far beyond their world, deep in space, signals carried their story to new civilizations. Some believed it a myth, a tale told to children before sleep. But others built monuments and whispered the same words before every treaty, before every new friendship. Peace begins with one act of kindness. And on a quiet world, lit by twin suns, a small toy still spun inside a crystal case, humming gently, forever. Its sound was no longer just metal and light. It was a memory, a promise, a legend that would never fade. Because once a human child and an alien girl refused to see enemies, and instead they saw hearts. And from that single act, the galaxy learned what it truly meant to be human.